Fear is part of one of the primary threat management systems that we have. The job of the mind is to assess the world for opportunities and threats, to assess the world for it, and then to figure out ways of best to take advantage of the opportunities and to mitigate against the threats.
Fear is less about something that has happened. Fear can be based on what has happened, but fear tends to be something that is looked forward to. And it's sometimes imagined, it's sometimes real, but it comes from a very real place. And it can sometimes overwhelm and keep us from living and moving forward and living in the present if we're afraid about what's going to happen.
Most of our behaviors are a combination of these evolved inclinations that prepare us to learn certain things from our life experiences that then play themselves out in certain kind of circumstances. So for example, we might think about spiders and snakes. A lot of people are afraid of spiders and snakes, but a lot of people aren't. Our primate ancestors, for them, spiders and snakes were very, very dangerous. They evolved to be concerned about them. For humans, spiders and snakes aren't such a big problem, but we do have the capacity, we're prepared to learn to be afraid of them.
On the one hand, there's an attraction to fear too. I mean, there are those people who are fear seekers. I'm not one of those personally, but there are people who walk across the Grand Canyon on a tightrope, who do it for a living, and they like the thrill of that. I think prejudice, which is prejudging based on something in the past, and that's what fear is based on, is something in the past that somehow manifests itself in the present.
Humans are highly social, interdependent animals. Ultra-social is one of the words that we use. We live in groups, we depend on members of our groups, and so when we see people who give cues to suggest that they're not members of our group, we're wary of them.
I think a lot of the division that exists today between races and communities and even individuals is because people don't know each other. And that fear of the unknown is something we grow up with as children. I think it's easier to know people who look like us, who live in our communities geographically, who think like us, who dress like us, whose skin color looks like us. There's a familiarity in that. And once upon a time, there used to be laws that kept people apart who looked different. And so these real fears sometimes came out of mythologies based on what we didn't know as opposed to what we did know. When you have dolls being sold like this in Sam's Club or Walmart, or you have things circulating on the internet where President Obama's family is perceived as a monkey family, those are the kinds of things that show me that we are really not having these deep, productive conversations about race and difference in ways that matter.
So I think this idea of better understanding the mechanisms underlying prejudice will actually lead us to more nuanced, more tailored, more effective interventions to reduce inappropriate prejudices.
The fear is not just inconsequential, and it's not just based on individuals. Sometimes it can lead to a mob mentality, and sometimes it can actually lead to much violence and suffering. So I don't want to somehow suggest that the fear is based on whether or not you want to be in a room with insects or whether or not you want to be in the room with snakes, because that fear has to do with how we treat each other and how we respond to people or how we don't interact with people. And I think it's those kinds of ways that Project Humanities is just one strategy that's trying to get people who ordinarily wouldn't come together to have conversations, to have dialogue, and we have to believe that so much can be achieved simply through talking, listening, and connecting.